First of all, thank you very much for the invite. It's very good to be here with you guys. I'm going to talk about Apertus. And I don't have any sweaters to give away, but I will still have some questions, some show of hands later on. And I'm going to talk about how I'm using Apertus for 3 different products. One of them is the pipeline, the video pipeline that is actually the main topic of this discussion. But there are many other ways that you can use Apertus. And what I'm trying to say is, like, Apertus is it's a small model, but it's open weights and open source, and you see very little of that. Yeah. So everything started actually last year. I went to Scotland and I bought a book that was written in the 1600s, and it had all these fables of Aesop. And then Runway made a hackathon, and they were trying to give people credits so they can be creative. And I thought that would be a great use case for an LLM. And I was thinking about Apertus. And if you have taken a look into an old book, you see that the language, first of all, is very complex. It's all English. It's hard to read. I was able to take all these images and then put the text into Apertus, and I said, I want to make these short stories. Of course, Apertus is a small model. It cannot render any video. It cannot do any audio. So I was using all these other models to put it together. Runway can do 10-second scripts, whatever you want to do. 11 Labs can voice it really nicely. They really have the best voices in the world. Shopify is the best tool to try to sell the stuff, or at least to distribute it. And then YouTube is the distribution engine. But Apertus wrote every prompt for every video, every prompt for every caption, and the whole storyline. This is what I want to talk to you today. First of all, the model, introduce it, because I'm assuming not everybody knows it. Why open weights are important, in my opinion. What can you do with open weights on a device? How can you use it to produce this kind of videos? And then we heard a lot about RAGs before. How can you use RAGs to create a richer device experience? And hopefully some words that you can take home after the words. To me, I'm Miguel Rodriguez. I'm actually a mechanical engineer. I moved into software many years ago, back in the times where you could actually do that. I built many products using AI. I'm very AI pilled. My girlfriend keeps complaining that I don't go to bed early enough. The first one was a robot Ross. It's a small teaching robot that I got a year ago, and I cloud coded so that it will draw. But then my girlfriend said, yeah, a drawing robot is boring. You should have it narrate. And she showed me videos of Bob Ross, which was a painter back in the 80s, would actually show on the television, and he will start drawing a picture of a mountain. He said it's a beautiful mountain. There are no errors, just happy mistakes or happy beauty things to do. So that's what I did. I built Robot Ross, but I'm a mechanical engineer, and I was like, okay, this is good, but what good can I do with this? And being an engineer, I started creating systems that will explain what Robot Ross was doing. So basically creating like a wiki for Robot Ross and creating a RAG for the Robot Ross as well. Then what happened was I'm not really working for Apertus, but I believe in open source models. I believe also in models that you can keep on your phone, because I don't want every query that I do to have to make it to a server somewhere in California and back. So I started working on something I called Silicon Oracle, and the name is a bit of a pun, because what happens is if you have a small model, it just starts to hallucinate. And I was trying to say, okay, I want to use all my images to create a wiki of my life, and the model started hallucinating. My dog, which is called Pebbles, suddenly was called Barbara, and nothing was working. And I guess my girlfriend saw my desperation, and she said, look, you know, you should do these hallucinations, make it into the feature. And you should make something that is like an oracle, because an oracle, if you know about the history, this was this place in Delos in Greece. Somebody will come with a question. There was these ladies that will actually listen to the question. They will go downstairs into a cave. And actually, anthropologists found out that in the cave there was a leak of gas. So what was happening is the ladies were getting high. After listening to that question, they will come back and they will say all this nonsense, which was because they were high. So because the model just fantasizes, I created an application that runs on the phone that is called Silicon Oracle. All of this I did with something I call the flotilla. Me being from Mexico, it's not a fleet, it's a flotilla. And basically the reason is because I'm an engineering consultant, I cannot tell my customers which model to use. I needed to use all the models. I needed to use Claude and Codex and Gemini or new Argy, and of course Mistral, and of course the Chinese models. And also because I don't have a very large budget for tokens, I just had the $20, $15 subscriptions, which means I was running out of tokens, and I had to get a fleet so that if one task was not completed by one agent, the next one could take it. I also created a paper out of this because I ended up in very funny error situations where an agent will just stop in the middle and then nobody will pick up the stuff. And then what I also did was this classical reels, the video that you saw, and this is what I will also show you a little bit. But I will talk about all of this in the talk. First of all, what is Apertus? A show of hands. How many of you have heard of Apertus? Good. How many of you have used Apertus? How many of you have used Apertus in a smartphone? Hopefully, after this talk, you will be able to have these hands up if you want to. So Apertus is fully open. And what does this mean? If you get a Quen model, yes, you have the open weights. You can take and make a lot out of it, but you don't know which information went into there. You don't have any data about the pipelines. Apertus is fully open. They are not showing just the open weights. They have the training data. They have the whole tool chain that they have used for it. So it's very transparent. The other thing that is also very interesting about Apertus is Apache 2.0, which means you can take it and you can use it. There are many open weights models out there that say, yes, you can take it, but actually, if you start selling more than 10 million, we want to talk to you, which you know what it means. And then there is a third thing about Apertus, because this is Switzerland. So you have many languages, and these guys even went further away. They teach a lot of Russian and Chinese and all this into the model, which means with Apertus you can actually even talk English if you want. Now, don't get me started about Swiss German, because the problem with Swiss German is they don't agree which one is the Swiss German, but it will throw out something that sounds like a mix of Zurich-Touch, Bern-Touch, and Sugar-Touch together. It can kind of like talk it. But the important thing is it can understand it. So, almost in time for this talk, the team from Apertus released version 1.5. It's just 6 days ago. I have a theory. I think what happened was everybody was trying to go on holidays, and the main researcher said, if you don't have this, you don't go on holidays, and that's why they put it out on the 24th. But it's very good news. Why? Because the original Apertus was not multimodal. It was just text. So this basically, if you look at the evolution of LLMs, this puts you maybe 2 years behind. Now they have a multimodal model, and most important, they have the mini family. They have an Apertus Nano, Apertus Mini, something that is 0.5B, 1.5B, 3B. A 3B model is something you can get running. You need just maybe 2 giga of memory, so it will run on the smartphone. And of course, they still have the normal Apertus that they've been using. The 70B is the one that I'm using for the video generation. And of course, there is also an AP variant. An AP variant will run on your laptop. Now, why do you want to run open weights? And I have to say, this slide was very hard until a month ago. Because I would tell the people, look, you can do local processing. The model runs on your machine. It's your prompts. Nothing leaves your thing. And they were like, yeah, but I have NDAs with all these providers. I could tell them, look, you can have almost zero marginal cost. If the system is running on the pieces that you already have, you are not paying anybody for tokens. If the system can run on your smartphone, on your personal smartphone, you are not paying anybody. And they were like, we don't care. We have money. We have tokens, token maxing. And then the Orange Man did me the best favor. They decided to close Fable. And now everybody's listening to this saying, OK, I understand. With an open weights model, you don't have any geopolitical dependency. If the Commerce Department of the US decides to throw the next fit, or the Chinese decide to throw the next fit, you have the model. It might be an old model. It might be not the fastest model, but you have the model. You own it. And as a company, you don't want to build something based on a model that somebody in Washington or in Peking can decide to close the door on you in a night. So again, these are the main reasons. I think the third one, in my opinion, is not the best one, but it's definitely something very important now. Coming back, so we're talking about models, and I'm not against the big models. I actually work a lot with Claude. I work a lot with Codex. All the development that I do, and many of the processing that I do is done through them, because they are really good models. They can do a lot of things. But you have to see that there is different categories. You have, if suddenly the model is not there, you can still have models like Mistral or Qwen, that they are not as good as Claude, but they are good enough. They can do, a Mistral can program as good as a Sonnet. It's good enough. Qwen as well. And they can also run locally if you don't want to use their servers. But then again, Apertus is in another league, not only because it is something you can run yourself, it's also because it's very open. You can do, you can actually point to which data was used to train, which is not something that you can do with Qwen or with Mistral. Anyway, so I'm going to now show you the Silicon Oracle. This application is actually in the Apple Store. I launched it just this week. Basically, what this is doing is, I have a dog. I already told you. It's called Pebbles. It's a Portuguese water dog. And what I created is, I'm feeding all these pictures of the dog, and I'm asking the model, now go and create a story of my dog as if you were a cosmopolitan diva. And of course, it creates a horoscope, love life of the dog. I can create a video clip of basically everything that the dog is supposed to be doing according to Cosmopolitan. It can also be according to Sherlock Holmes. It can be according to Shakespeare. It can be a manga store. And I'm using two models here. I'm using the Qwen for the visualization. So this Qwen goes and looks into the pictures and says, there is a dog and it has this orange thing hanging. And I use Mistral, which is from Mistral, to basically write down this text. But I also have Apertus as a sovereign version if you want to use it. You can select basically when you have the phone. You can download multiple models and you can decide I want to use this for this generation or a different one. So the problem, as I mentioned, is this small model is good for an application like that. I don't know how many people want to create fantastic stories about their dogs. But we have multiple problems. First is the reasoning. It cannot do multi-logic steps. It just gets lost. The context window is not big enough. The second one is it doesn't do facts. These are the typical models that you ask about the R's on the Raspberry, and they don't know how to answer. And also the context, because the context is so small, if you have a long conversation, it just can't do it. At some point in time, it just cannot proceed. It starts even repeating the same thing that you have told it. That's what happens, actually. Now, the thing is, the fix is not having a bigger model. It's giving the small model the best support. So I have spoken now about Apertus. I think I've made the point about why you should have open weights and also what open weights can do on a device. Now, I want to show you how I use Apertus in production for the video production. And then I'm going to end the talk with a way how you can actually make a small model be a good model, be something that really you can use using RAGs. This is the pipeline that I'm using to create the videos. Basically, I have Shopify in the front because why do you want to write a shop on your own? I have a DigitalOcean server. That's where the whole processing is happening. And then I have an option of models. I'm actually using Mistral for French because they're French. I'm using Claude because it actually generates pretty good English text. But everything else, Italian, Romansh, Swiss German, is going through Apertus. And now, what happens is when you throw a story, like for example, when I throw the story of the lion and the mouse, I throw a big bunch of tests. It's actually a SOP. And I need these models to take all this story and first try to break it, because I'm making 90-second videos. You know, the new generations, TikTok, YouTube Reels is what they will share. So this means I need 9-10-second segments, and they need to have captions that match. And I also need to have some character sequencing. If you saw the video, the lion on the first clip is also the lion on the second clip, and so on. So I need the models to basically be the directors. They are not Nolan, but they can do a pretty good job at deciding, okay, I need these 9 clips. I am going to put these 9 captions on it. And they even have a way to, especially with 11 Labs, to add intonations to the story, so that it's not just a flat robotic voice. And then the giant, one of the giants of open source is FFmpeg. You put all of this together with FFmpeg, you end up with a video that is already optimized for YouTube. You upload it to YouTube. And what I also did is, because I have all this reasoning, I can show you, if you are the one who ordered the story, I can show you for every 10-second video which prompt was used, which caption was used. And in the future, I also want to make it so that you can edit it. If you don't like the prompt, you can change the prompt and it can be regenerated. Now this is Aesop. But I was telling you about my little smartphone excursion. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I believe that if you use a RAG with a small model, and we saw it actually on the previous talk, it can be very good if you are using it on a very specific domain. And I'm a machine engineer. I come from the machinery industry. In many times, I know how it works. You get an order for a given machine. You build the machine in the lab. Everything works. You send it to the field. Nothing works. And to the field, you don't send the engineer. To the field, you send a poor guy who is, might be even a local guy, but you send somebody who is just a technician. He doesn't know what happens there. So if you use RAG, the first thing you can do with a local model is you can put all the facts in the RAG. So if you are going to ask it about R's in strawberries, you can, in the RAG, say, strawberry has 3 R's. You can also use character prompts. Why? Because it's important. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to an engineer? Are you talking to a technician? Are you talking to a product manager? Are you talking to a production manager? They need different vocabulary. They need different answers. And the third thing that I did is, because I can generate this RAG, I can make a wiki out of it. Everybody knows Wikipedia. So if I tell them, hey, your machine, they see the wiki pages of your machine, they can go and look into them and say, yeah, this is correct. One problem that you have often in industry is the manuals that you have, they might be out of date. They are from an older machine, or maybe they are from that machine, but in the end, what was delivered was a little bit different. So if you provide a wiki to the people that are going to use it, they can read it and see, okay, this is the information that's being used, this is wrong, I can fix it now before it gets into the rack. And I have, actually, I was lucky, I was invited to a Mistral hackathon a few weeks ago. And this is what we put together. And to me, it's actually a very interesting video, because what you have is, this is Robot Ross, and you can see he's making a mess of the M. That's supposed to be the M of Mistral, made a mess. So you can actually have this chat with the rack and say, hey, what can you tell me? Please tell me about calibration, and the system will go and look for the calibration. It will tell you, this is how you calibrate the robot process, this is how you calibrate it. And then you can say, hey, the pen just went too low. What happened here? And the system will tell you, hey, basically you need to calibrate the system. So you can go ahead and calibrate the system, and now the robot will do the proper drawing. And this is a very simple example, but it's basically the point that I'm trying to make. If you are going to ship not just a small drawing robot, but a big machine, don't ship the machine with a big folder of documents or a bunch of PDFs. Who is going to read that? Ship something that you can then put in somebody's laptop or in somebody's smartphone, and they can ask the questions as they are seeing the problem and hopefully get a solution. So that's what I have done. I built this. It's a system I call Sovereign Mind. Yeah, I'm not the best at naming, sorry about that. But what I'm trying to say is, and here I have to thank you for showing what RAG is. Basically, it's the process that you will use to create a RAG, with a little tweak. It's not just the whole ingestion. It can be your PDFs, it can be your source code. In the case of the robot, I made it with the source code, and it's perfect because it's up to date. And you, of course, do the whole chunking, and you create the RAG. But then you also have this wiki that you can look at it, kind of like an editor, and see, am I missing something? Is there something wrong? You can fix it. Then you can sync it to the device. So basically, in the device, you have an iOS app that loads a model, in this case, Apertus. It can also be Mistral. It can be Quen, if you want to use Quen. And then what I call it is the submarine test. You can put the smartphone in airplane mode, talk to the system, and it will answer. And why is this? I've been sent to the field many times. You are in a production environment. You have no internet. Nobody's going to give you internet in a production field, because they don't give internet to their own operators. You might be in a basement, when even if you said, okay, I can use my GSM, no, you can't, because you have very weak signals. But then the other thing that I did, which is something that we did because of the hackathon, is I want the system to learn. So if you have one version of the rack, the first version of the rack, it's used by an engineer. And it asks for questions to solve a problem. And once it found the solution to the problem, we can then ask the rack, we can ask the LLMs, the big LLMs, to look into the rack. This was the problem, what was the solution, and create this and add it into the next version of the rack. So the RAG is not just the wiki, but you also have like an FAQ, which means that the system is learning on its own. And next time that somebody has a similar problem, they can look into the system and they will benefit from the experience from the people that have already solved that problem. Now, some of you in the audience will say, yeah, but wait a minute, you can use LoRa. And I can tell you, you could, but not for this use case. I actually created my own version of Apertus with LoRa. The problem with LoRa is you can never put knowledge in a model. And if there is something you have to remember tonight is that you will never put knowledge in a model. It's really like an open book text. If you remember in your years at the university, like I remember the worst exams, thermodynamics, things like that, all these exams were open book. Why? Because the teacher knew, okay, if you know what you're doing, having the book is not a problem. And that's exactly what this is. The model is the student. It knows the basics about thermodynamics. He knows what to look for. But if you're going to look at the tables, you need the book. So this is why you cannot really use LoRa at this problem. You need to use a combination of the local model and RAG and prompting, and the cycle to bring back all the knowledge that is acquired back into the RAG again. So, which path did I took you today? We started with Silicon Oracle, the story about my dog that is now called Maggie instead of Pebbles. Then I showed you how you can actually use a 70B model, a Swiss model, to create videos using classical reels. And I also showed you how you can actually improve the local RAGs running on your phone to make them something that is useful, something that you can really deploy in the field, and it will work. And these are the famous last words. Again, you need to leave the judgment, so the language understanding, the intention of the user, this is in the model. You need a model that if you need to talk to it in French, it should understand that. But the facts have to be in a wiki. Facts have to be in a RAG, external, that you can feed the model. And in my opinion, you should have the queries at almost zero marginal cost. Of course, yes, the phone needs to be paid by, the computer needs to be paid back, but these are something that you already have on your hardware. And if you want, feel free to try Silicon Oracle, classical reels, Sovereign Mind. In Sovereign Mind, it's an app actually that has all the data from the robot, so that you can try it and understand what will it be doing. But I also have a pipeline that you can, if there is anybody who is interested in testing this, get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to help you with some ingestions. And I know that this sovereignty is important, so while I do have a pipeline running on my servers that will run with Claude and Codex and generate the wiki for you, if you don't want me to do that, I can also give you the recipes so that you can do it yourself and upload them. And with this, I end my presentation. I hope I was able to show you how, hopefully this weekend, you can raise your hand next time somebody asks how you use Apertus on your phone locally. Thank you very much.